The title is very ambitious. It's not about the future. I'm not a witch doctor that will tell you about the future, but just to say things that maybe we need to know to be prepared. My paper will be more of an overview at a macro level of the continent, and it will see the challenges that we do have in the continent, and the assets also, and maybe some directions of the new Africa that's ahead. It's more about smarter cities. Cities are already smart in their own way, but we need to do it in a better way. And there is not one definition of smart cities. I think every single place, every single city in the world has their own definition, and the definition needs to be more appropriate to the specific context and cultural traditions of the place. It's a lot about people, it's a lot about common sense. There is another thing which is very challenging. When you look at the map of Africa, all the infrastructure, roads, rails, are like rivers that flow from inland to the coast. Why? Because they were built in the colonial days. They were built to drain all the resources of the continent to bring them to Mother England or Mother France or Mother Portugal. And they do not connect the countries between themselves. They connect the inland to the coast. And secondly, the infrastructure is like 50 to 60 years old. Under capacity, unrepaired, and also not maintained. This is where most of them are, except for a few countries which are now taken that in a different place. I will speak of the 5 mobilities that we have in the whole world, but in Africa. The first one is about people. People move a lot in the whole world, but in Africa, outside the continent, but also within the continent. Even in South Africa, you have people from Zaire, Congo, Zimbabwe that have moved here, and it's the same in all the different countries, from north to south, from south to north. The people move for better future, work, sometimes war, sometimes natural disaster, climate. South Sudan is an example of it become a country because of that, of the climate disasters. And then people move for goods. It has always been like that. They move for trade, and they sell goods among themselves. But nowadays we have 3 other sort of mobilities that are linked to the continent. These mobilities are accelerated by IT. One is services. It opens new areas of trade which did not occur before, the access to new markets without moving the good and the people. Second, the mobility of ideas, knowledge, through IT again, and education. It is transforming the way we used to relate to each other. Uganda is using health by distance, just a small text, SMS, to be able to communicate to people how not to use water or to use water. So it changes, instead of infrastructure, it moves to this kind of mobility. And the third and last mobility, which is new, is the capital movement, money. Money flows in different ways without people going to bank or moving. And this has a very strong benefit on the whole continent. One is remittance. The African immigrants outside Africa send money back. Of course, Western Union, MoneyGram, very happy. They earn a lot of money with that, but it brings 21 billion US dollars per year to the continent, more than the total foreign international aid to Africa. One would not believe that. And on top of it, $100 which is given by foreign aid, whether World Bank or you name it, about 60% is lost in the administration of the money. At the end of the day, the country earns like $40, whereas the remittance is very huge, and if this money could be channeled to do collectively more work, there would be huge improvement in the continent. If we start speaking of the assets, I think the people are the main assets of the continent. We have the young, of course, but at the same time, we do have a lot of brain drain, but the brain drain means a diaspora. And in many of the African countries, especially in West Africa, the young diaspora is coming back to the country. The young have been trained in Paris, New York, London. They're coming back, they invest in their country. Cape Verde, which is a small country, they have more people overseas than in their own country. Most of them are in New York. So you can imagine, and now they're coming back, investing heavily in their own country. We export raw materials instead of transforming them in high-value manufacturing. And again, it doesn't create jobs, it doesn't create the value and the plus value for the whole continent. And this is being changed. There are new ways that most of these countries now understand and are trying to improve on that. But you will notice one thing. In renewables, because we are talking with engineers and all of in renewables, in energy, in water, you have no heavy investment from foreign, non-African, in the continent. Why? Because it's not exportable. You have to consume on site, and therefore they don't invest. This is where there are huge opportunities for the whole continent to invest in its own country, and especially in terms of energy, when you think that 65% of the consumption of the emerging world will be in the continent of Africa, 2/3. So you have a potential, and sun is not something you are scarce of here. You can really do something about it. And again, in the blue gold, in the green gold, in the silver economy, all these are areas which are not at all interesting the foreign, by foreign I mean non-African investor. The IT enable us, and most Africans do have a smartphone nowadays, enable us to connect virtually the whole city, all the activities, the people, the transport, the energy, without physically changing the infrastructure. M-Pesa, you know about M-Pesa, has changed. 80% of the population didn't have a bank account, but they do transfer money in a different way. So you can solve a number of problems without changing the nature, the physical structure of the city nowadays, like a virtual city connecting everything. Drones, the first drone airport is in Kigali, Rwanda, delivering drugs to remote places without having to build a road to connect the cities. So I have spoken to you about the challenges, about the connections, about the assets, and what we do see in everything, that it's not all about technology. It's about transformation of the identity, the culture, the traditional knowledge into new ways of doing business and new ways of connecting people. And finally, cities are not only problems. Of course there are problems, but they are a huge pool of opportunities if we do transform these problems into opportunities. Thank you.